Josh Allen, looking deep, going deep.
To me, talking about the Bills, what else would you rather be doing?
We're hoping to add a new dimension.
Josh Allen, looking deep, going deep.
To me, talking about the Bills, what else would you rather be doing?
We're hoping to add a new dimension to the Cover One network.
Slings it deep downfield, and it's caught inside the 20.
Right now, I just want to talk about this championship level. I've never had a championship caliber team to talk about.
I want to focus more on the storylines each week. What are the big stories going on with the Bills? What are thoughts, commentary? How do these things impact Buffalo?
Deep drop. Deep throw. And it is hauled in for the touchdown.
Allen deep to the end zone and caught for a touchdown.
Play action. Allen. Deep downfield. Wide open.
Welcome into a new edition of the Going Deep podcast. I'm your host today, Kevin Nasseri, here with Mike Bunt to talk about this Sunday night football matchup, a really great one with the Green Bay Packers for Aaron Rodgers' biggest point spread ever of his career. Very interesting news and nuggets. Never expected them to have a losing record coming to Orchard Park. So a lot to dive into, lots of what's going on there. They have some interesting DVOA numbers going on in Green Bay with their defense, specifically one of the worst first and second down teams I've ever seen. And then third and fourth downs that actually nut up a little bit and play a little bit better defense. So there's some interesting trends going on in Green Bay, and then their offense is just atrocious. So there's a lot to break down from that. Fun bye week. Everyone got to rest and relax. Got to hopefully come back healthy. Hopefully the emergence of Trey White, a lot to get into there. But first and foremost, how you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing great. Bye week was enjoyable. Got some time off from the Bills, which isn't always a great thing, but it was nice to enjoy the fall a little bit. The Sabres are winning games. Buffalo is a happy place right now, and they have a game later tonight. So very good mood right now.
I mean, how can you not be? You have UB Ohio coming up this time next week. What a game for Mike. You have, sometimes that game doesn't matter, but now it's going to be basically for MAC championship. Yeah, I would assume that if UB pulls that off, they would be the MAC East champions fairly easily. You have the Sabres winning games. Mike's got to be in his glory once again here for what's going on. But just another week of watching football and another week of seeing other lackluster teams just not looking great. You saw KC look good. You saw them being able to take care of San Fran, a trendy. They traded for Christian McCaffrey. I'm glad to see that got done. Wasn't multiple first-round picks, as we discussed on this show. That's how negotiations work. It was barely equal to a late first round, end of the first round compensation, which was actually more than they probably even thought they would get. The Bills were said to have offered a second-round pick. So the report said, I firmly believe that was probably accurate, and they obviously went with a much greater offer as well. We saw James Robinson get traded to the Jets after Breece Hall went down. Our guy Breece Hall, great player, was really dynamic, really starting to come on scarily for the division. But now you see James Robinson there for a 6th-round pick. Would have liked to see the Bills interested in that kind of low-budget move to help out their offense, but all that's beside us. It's Trey White week. By all accounts, it does look like he's going to be up and at least on the active roster. Does he start and play? That we don't know. But it does look trending into the right direction of him playing. But just yet another week across the league, Mike, where teams just don't look great. It went fairly chalk, nothing crazy. Miami's barely able to beat a lowly Pittsburgh team at home. It just doesn't look great across the league right now.
Yeah, the NFL is full of mediocrity right now. There's 3 teams that are elite: the Bills, the Chiefs, the Eagles. Then there's a ton of teams that are just average. And then at the bottom, you can throw teams like Carolina and Detroit, which are just plain ugly to watch on a weekly basis. But that does similar opinions. You watch everyone in the league, and I don't think there's a team that can really keep up with the Bills outside of Kansas City. Philadelphia, we'll see. They're playing good football, but the Eagles really have not not to their fault. They haven't really faced anybody great to this point. And when you see the Jets at 5-2, the Giants at 6-1, I respected both of them for their great starts. But if that's the top of the league, it really doesn't say much for everyone else. And when you're seeing the Packers at 3-4, the Bucks at 3-4, losing to the Panthers, it's just ugly football by most of the teams across the NFL at this point. And I'll take it as long as the Bills continue to play great. And I see this mediocrity. My hopes get even higher and higher that they actually will end up having a really good chance of winning Super Bowl this year.
Now, what's funny about that you just went on, that actually Carolina ended up beating Tampa. So we even talked about the bottom, and then you had Pittsburgh basically taking Miami, needed multiple interceptions that happened to beat Miami, and Tua had about 4 or 5 interceptable passes.
That was an old drought type Bills game. Like there was a lot of those on Sunday. So like the Jets winning over Denver. Denver felt like an old Bills team where the defense gets stop after stop after stop after stop, and you're just hoping maybe this is the drive, and it just never happened. And the Pittsburgh game against Miami, very similar, where Miami jumps out to a quick lead. They look like they're going to blow out Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh does enough to stay in the game, and then every opportunity late, conservative punts, and then costly turnovers by Pickett. And God, it kind of brought up trauma and scary times from the past that I'm glad I don't need to live out anymore.
That's for sure. Well, we get to move on to what was supposed to be one of the games of the year, which was supposed to be a potential preview of the Super Bowl. It's who knows? Green Bay could still figure it out. I mean, the NFC is weak. They've already lost to Minnesota, but San Francisco, I know Christian McCaffrey didn't get a ton of touches yet, but still, they're still losing games. They still have Jimmy Garoppolo. Weird to go all in and trade the rest of your future for a running back when you're not in the position that the Bills are in. You're not in position that maybe Kansas City's in, and maybe even the Eagles, but the Eagles would be all set with the rebirth of Sanders. But anyways, San Francisco doesn't look like they're there. I don't even know who comes out of the NFC right now. You could have a random team come out of the NFC, which is great news for AFC fans of the Bills and Chiefs that are looking to, for the Chiefs' sake, win another one, for the Bills' sake, win their first one. It doesn't look like the NFC might not be that big of a threat outside of the Eagles. And this is their first year really doing it underneath this regime. So we'll see how that all equals and what that means in the playoffs. That usually to me equals upset alert when they go and play someone like Green Bay in the playoffs or Minnesota in the playoffs. That do they even make it through? We'll have to see what's up for Philadelphia there in the NFC. But as you look at this matchup, Green Bay to me, until they're down and out, Mike, it's kind of like Patrick Mahomes will be in 10 years, 15 years. I'm just not going to count them out. Whether it's against the Bills, whether it's against the Vikings, it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to count out Aaron Rodgers. But the one thing you have to mention is the offense isn't clicking here in Green Bay. They're not running the ball specifically very well. They don't have receiver. They just don't want to address receiver for some reason. No matter what goes on there, they don't want to address receiver. Now they're out Allen Lazard, Randall Cobb. They're in a world of pain at the receiver position, playing Romeo Doubs, a guy that looked pretty good in the pre-draft process. And they're just pretty lackluster. And Sammy Watkins, they're just pretty lackluster at the receiver position. And the offensive line has always had its issues in Green Bay. It's not pretty there right now, but the one X factor is, does Aaron Rodgers figure it out on Sunday Night Football, where he's always performed fairly well, and in an atmosphere where no one expects them to win as a double-digit dog? Are those extrinsic things worrying you, Mike? After you can look at all the data you want, we can get into some of them. We're going to get into some of the DVOA shortly. But are those things worrisome to you? That is there something to that, or is this beyond that? Is this one of those games where it's like, I don't really care about this Mobo, Jobo, Rodgers against the world mindset, or does that legitimately mean something to you?
I'm honestly not too worried about this game going into it. Yes, you never know what can happen in the NFL, and a guy like Aaron Rodgers can just find it in a snap, and they could come to Buffalo, they could upset the Bills, and next thing you know, they could be rolling heading into the late part of the season and make a run in the playoffs. So I'm not going to put that past the Packers finding themselves. But right now, based off what they've done to this point this season, they are truly not a good team. They're not a solid football team at this point of the year. They have looked, quite frankly, pretty poor on offense the last month. I know you said we'll wait on DVOA, but right now DVOA, they are the 10th ranked offense, which is kind of a little bit of a surprise if you've watched them in recent weeks. The 14th passing, 14th running, which ends up giving them a little bit of a boost because some teams are quite a bit lower in one of those two categories. But when you hit it, right now they don't have weapons for him to throw the ball to. When you're talking about Robert Tonyan as the leading reception guy on the Packers, and Romeo Dobbs, Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb being the guys that you're leaning on, and Sammy Watkins hasn't even been playing football. There's a surprise. There's just not many elite playmakers, and they've been able to mask it in previous years because you have a guy like Devontae Adams who's just a legit freak and superstar that he felt like he could just keep targeting time and time again. But it's just not the case right now. The running game is okay, but it's nothing spectacular. And the biggest thing I'm noticing right now with what I'm watching on the Packers and seeing analysis and everything is that Aaron Rodgers just does not have a lot of faith in any of his offensive guys, whether it be his offensive line not protecting him well against the Jets, against Washington, or when there are opportunities to maybe go deep or throw something, a jump ball contested situation, he's checking them down. And he's not always even checking down with great accuracy. So this is not just a lack of weapons. This is Aaron Rodgers not playing great football either. And he can say everything such as this is the perfect time to play the Bills because everyone's doubting us. But that's the only positive you have going into the game. That's not saying much about the Packers at this point.
Yeah, and as you break down the stats further, Randall Cobb was actually having a very good receiving year, believe it or not, before injury. As usual, just like you mentioned with Sammy Watkins, hurt, out, done for the year. Alan Lazard hurt his shoulder, is not expected to play even if he goes limited. Don't expect much from Alan Lazard, who has shown to be maybe that Devontae Adams fill-in. For all you fantasy football fans out there, was a good mid to late round pick for people. Definitely a player with potential. Number one receiver, no. I don't know that even he's on the level of Gabe Davis at this stage, but he has shown to have some rapport with Aaron Rodgers. So has played fairly well so far this season, not expected to go. Dubes has had his issues across the board. Dobbs, I mean, he's just dropped plenty of passes. He's had issues. He's shown flashes, definitely strong potential there for a fourth round pick, shown that he could be, maybe their version of Khalil Shakir, but just quite frankly isn't ready to be a number one receiver for Aaron Rodgers that he needs to be. And then Sammy Watkins has only played 113 snaps this year, is expected to be healthy, at least for this one, and on a one game basis. We'll see what he's able to do. And then Amari Rodgers would be their other receiver. And it just doesn't look good from a passing perspective. They just don't address it ever. They just really never feel like spending more than a third or fourth round pick at the position. And it's just, it's unfortunate. Undrafted free agent, they found Lazard. Obviously they got Cobb back after many years of being a veteran. Dobbs is a fourth round pick. They did go and get Watson, who seems to be out of this fairly good receiver class, not playing very well either.
He had a wide open, wasn't it Watson who had a wide open ball early in the year and just dropped it on what would have been a long bomb touchdown. So that's not a way to instill faith in Aaron Rodgers. And you know what, Kev, I think when you look at it, the Packers organization, their front office or management, I think they just continued to believe year after year after year that they could get by without investing in weapons, and that Rodgers would just continue to carry him. And this is proof you can be one of the best quarterbacks in the world. Eventually, if you don't have playmakers, it's kind of tough to be successful at your position. And it's tough to see the Packers struggling as much as they have been. But hey, I welcome it as a Bills fan this week, especially since Green Bay has never won a game in Buffalo against the Bills, and it looks like strong chance for that to continue.
What's interesting too is if you look at, as we start to get into their defense a little bit, their first down against the pass, they're 18th in DVOA. So there's definitely something to jump on them early. First down rush against the run, 28th. So there's definitely first downs down to get them. If you're staying in 1st and 10 for the majority of your drives, you're in good shape. Second down, one of the worst teams in the league on second down, which is interesting. 31st against the rush. They're just not stopping the rush at all. Second down pass, 22nd. So they're getting worse on second down. So if you can beat them first and second down, I don't see them being able to match much of what you're able to do. They stiffen up a little bit, which is interesting, Mike. 5th in the league on 3rd and 4th down, and 3rd in the league on rushing the ball on 3rd down. No one's throwing. I'm going to imagine no one's running the ball on them in 3rd and 4th situations, as well as 5th in the league against the pass on 3rd and 4th downs. So what is the reasoning why they're horrific on 1st and 2nd down, like bottom of the league, but then they tighten up? Do you have any reasoning why that could be? Like what happens on 3rd down? They're not in it much. Teams are overthinking it. Like what's going on against Green Bay where you can get anything you want on and seemingly DVOA related on 1st and 2nd down, but then they come to play a little bit. That's interesting. Usually the reverse.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what's going on with them with that, but it's just a team, in my opinion, that's just going through a lot of struggles. You look at it overall, if you, even breaking out, going to my numbers right here, this 3-game losing streak, they've just stopped being able to run the ball at all. So if you really want to look at the Packers, the biggest reason they're not getting things done, we always look at the Packers and talk about Aaron Rodgers. He has not been Aaron Rodgers all year. The most he's thrown for a game this year, if you're looking at the pass yardage, is 248 against Tampa Bay. So you go the past 3 weeks, it's 207, 218, 194. If you're throwing for around only 200 yards total, you're struggling. And then the running game, no help at all. 94, 60, 38 yards. It's just going away. And if you're the Packers or a fan of Green Bay, you're hoping that it's just a cold stretch. But when you talk about doing that against the Giants, the Jets, and Washington, that's scary. I mean, I like I said earlier in the show, props to the Jets and the Giants, but that Green Bay should not be struggling against those teams the way they have been. I know the Jets have played solid defensively. Washington has some guys on their squad, but it's just a combination of a lot of things not going right for the Pack.
And I like this comment about maybe they are awful when they have to defend both. They're not sure what their assignment is. They're getting confused against different coverages, different reads. And that could quite frankly be one of the best reasonings I've seen yet. They're not sure. They're not able to simplify it. And then 3rd and 4th down, maybe it's an obvious throw, maybe it's an obvious run. And in those situations, they're able to tighten up a little bit. And DVOA might point to that. It does show that they're better on 3rd and 4th down defensively. So we'll see. Those 3rd and 4th and short plays might matter. Green Bay's pretty good in that situation right now. You don't want to get into that, though. You want to make them guessing. You want to make them assume that if Josh is going to run, if you're going to have a Devin Singletary game or not. So you want them to make that seems to be a real problem for Green Bay, not understanding what they're seeing. And they're just not playing particularly great coverage right now. And being 25th DVOA defense, that's usually music to the Bills' ears. Green Bay has been up and down historically at defense. Sometimes they have really good years. Sometimes Aaron Rodgers is in their entire team. But most numbers point to that. They have fairly struggling Eric Stokes playing cornerback right now, 409 snaps. One of the worst coverage guys in the league currently. That's going to be fun. Rasul Douglas is a guy that's kind of bounced around a little bit, but kind of rebirthed himself as a slot corner. So we'll see what he's able to do. One of the better cornerbacks on their roster. And then Jair Alexander is kind of a solid run-of-the-mill guy up and down throughout his career, and definitely had a really good early part of his career and is struggling a little bit at the current moment. And then there's no safety play there. Savage and Amos are struggling mightily right now per advanced statistics. They are the most targeted safety tandem in the league. They're just not getting it done. And maybe that goes down to the simplification of it. They're getting confused with run and pass across the league. So that's a really interesting note. And they're both really struggling in coverage. So they're coming up, they're trying to make run, they're trying to help and run, and they're getting burned per their coverage statistics. So lots of good there, Mike, for the Buffalo Bills offense. As you see, secondary, 1st and 2nd downs awful. Their secondary is awful. There's definitely
one defense awful too. I mean, you want to hear these numbers? How many rush yards they've allowed in the last couple of weeks? 166 against Washington, 179 against the Jets, 125 against the Giants, 167 against the Patriots, 180 against the Bears, 126 against Minnesota, and then somehow they held Tampa Bay to like 34. So this team can't stop the run. And you know what? Maybe this is a perfect opportunity for the Bills to try to keep their run game going. Bills had some success against Kansas City. And obviously the Bills are a pass-first team. You want to let Josh Allen cook, but also good to develop some confidence. I like the comment, maybe get James Cook more involved in the run game this Sunday, get him some confidence, build that up a little bit. And if the Bills can start running on you, there's no way you can stop them, because then Josh Allen is just going to be set up for everything. So I like this matchup a ton for the Bills. I can't believe it's an 11-point line right now based on what I would have thought going into the season, but it's deservedly so.
Yeah, I mean, there was a point where I was expecting this to be like a 1 or 2 point Bills line. Like that was probably preseason what I was expecting this to be. And to show you the gamut of struggles that they've had and the difference of seasons that these teams have had, I would never have thought this would not be one of the easiest games left. And it is. I mean, you look at some of the numbers and metrics breaking down what's the expectation. It is DVOA potentially one of the easier remaining, especially because it's at home, one of the easier remaining Bills games left. So it's very strange that I would not have expected that. And I wanted to do a little exercise with you. We'll get into that toward the end of the show on strength of schedule. I wanted with the 11 remaining games. I was kind of thinking about this as I was prepping for the show. What's the hardest remaining Bills game? Because this was supposed to be it.
I mean, going into season, you would say this, but
is it road Jets? I really
no.
Okay,
No,
road Bengals. Road Bengals?
Road Bengals is
okay.
the only acceptable answer at this point. Monday night on the road against a team that could be battling for a division title at that point in the season. It has to be road Cincy. Minnesota, good record. They're at home. The Bills should win that game. New England, we saw them get exposed last night. No. Miami, credit to them for beating Buffalo the first time. They're not coming into Buffalo in December and defeating the Bills at Highmark Stadium. And the Jets, great story. Amazing defense. But you know what? The Bills' defense is equally great to the Jets. And the Bills also can do something called pass the ball and score points. So you look at it, I would say this is probably the second most difficult team-wise left. But I still don't expect it to be that close of a game. And if the Bills are 11-point favorites against teams like Green Bay, it's going to be crazy, some of these lines, as the season goes on towards the end.
What's very interesting, Mike, overall DVOA 20th for Green Bay. So it's not even really in the top half. That's the thing. Not even in the top half of their strongest games, Rust.
A lot of people, and I saw one of the comments mentioning how Green Bay is going to have that extra incentive. They're going to be hungry. And I do think there's an aspect where being hungry, being angry and motivated might make some impact on games. But the Bills are coming off a bye week. This is the healthiest that they've been since the beginning of the season. Josh Allen knows about the history of football. He grew up watching guys like Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers. He knows the significance of this. The last time Josh Allen went up against Aaron Rodgers, the Bills were shut out at Lambeau. Josh is going to want to go out and one-up one of the guys he grew up watching. And I'm not going to say the Bills are going to be completely focused for this. And their record after bye weeks has been tremendous under Sean McDermott. I'm not worried about Green Bay being hungry. The numbers show the Bills are a vastly superior team. Maybe in past years that wasn't the case, but so far through 7 weeks, the Bills are a much better team. I think there's a better chance of this being a blowout than it is a Green Bay win, in my opinion.
I think that there's no way they sleep on Sunday Night Football against Green Bay. I would even think there's a better argument that they sleep Thanksgiving against Detroit than they do Green Bay at home Sunday Night Football. Aaron Rodgers, a struggling, slumping team with the DVOA metrics, Mike.
Sleeping a lot of times isn't really even sleeping. It's sometimes you just played bad football,
sure.
or you weren't completely prepared. Like the Jags game last year, we always reference it. That's a horrible loss, obviously. But the Jags also came to play. Josh Allen, the defensive end, had an incredible performance, and they were on our Josh, the entire day, and it was a struggle. So, yeah, that was a horrible loss, but you also want to give credit for a team when they perform and they show up. So if the Bills were to lose to Green Bay, if the Bills were to lose to an inferior team down the line, I don't want to just assume that they didn't show up. I want to give credit to the other teams for making plays and winning games. Any team except for Miami, we'll never give them credit for that win in week 3.
And since here's a stat for you guys, since Sean McDermott took over, 5-0 after the bye week. So I don't believe this is going to be the one they're going to Jags sleepwalk through. I think you saw it a little bit in Miami where it was hot. They were missing some players. It was one of those games again, like the Jags game, where you kind of just thought they might come through. They're just missing. I mean, Diggs was down on the ground. I mean, you had some of those things already happen, more or less. And Miami seems to be a stronger team than Jacksonville was last year. But it's essentially the same mindset. You've kind of already seen one of those games, and you're not going to go. We're not going to celebrate pop bottles like Miami going 16, 17-0, like their undefeated team. It's very strange that you root for other teams to lose. That's weird. Just like after following Aaron Judge's historic home run record, and then you see them cheering him on, to watch Miami consistently gloat about it's weird. It's just strange.
I get it. I get it. I mean,
it's strange.
It's a little strange, but I mean, if you're the one team to ever do that, I get why you celebrate it. You want to stand alone in history.
But then you have like Roger Maris Jr. following Judge around.
Some people want to see history. Other ones want to be the history. If you've already made it, some people don't want to share their place with other people. I get it. Different perspective. I'm not saying I would ever root for a team to lose in those situations, but I understand why the older Dolphins do.
You would want to like other people to potentially experience like the good and the best part of your playing days. It's just not what it's about to me, at least as an that's like what me and you talk about, or fans in general, podcasters, media. That's for them, but like actively root against, that's strange. That's a really weird energy. But Mike, getting back into this one, 5-0 off of a bye, it's just not something that happens underneath McDermott. Here's some stats I had for you against why I also believe that there's nothing that would point to Green Bay figuring it out, besides being 29th in DVOA on special teams. They're also 29th in estimated wins, meaning they didn't get unlucky. 2.5 wins is where they're supposed to be right now. They're actually playing over. The Bills are actually supposed to have been undefeated at this stage based on their projected DVOAs, but Green Bay's a half of a game worse. So they're actually getting lucky, not unlucky. They've also played the 25th worst schedule, meaning that they also played no one. The Bills have played the 6th hardest strength of schedule. And as I tweeted earlier yesterday, number 1 strength of victory in the league, 545 winning percentage. Number 1 in the leagues. There is no more like just beating the bottom of the barrel across the league like 2017. That's not what's going on here. And they're a future schedule for Green Bay, 6th hardest in the league. There's not a lot of day variance here on their DVOA. There's no regression. There is no progression to the mean to happen here, Mike. A lot of these numbers are bad. They're bad. They could figure some stuff out, but right now they're playing 2.5 win football with a 3-win record. So there's definitely some points that they might not be the team that even makes a wild card. I project them to kind of try to sneak in to one of those final wild card spots, but it's not looking good if teams like Dallas and Minnesota and obviously New York keep winning. Obviously Philly, they're going to run out of spots, and would never have guessed that. I
mean, at the end of the year, I think they'll make it. The question is, do they sneak in as a wild card? Do they find a way back in the division race? You look at the NFC North standings. Vikings, I believe, are 5-1 in Pack 3-4. Maybe I'm missing a game with the Vikings, but that's not good when you're trailing by that much in the loss column already. The Packers are going to have to beat the Vikings their next game and then go on some type of run while hoping the Vikings fall back down to earth. And even if you're looking at the wild card, I know I said earlier in the show that I don't think the Giants are great, but they're 6-1. You're talking about going 4-4 the rest of the year, and that probably gets 6-1. Yeah, talking about if the Giants can get 4 more wins, get to 10 wins, they probably can make the playoffs. You know the Eagles are going to make it. The Cowboys are probably going to make it. NFC West, someone's going to have to represent them. Rams, maybe the Seahawks, who have been super surprising. So there's not going to be a ton of spots, like you said. So it's going to be tough. The good thing for the Packers overall is just that the NFC overall sucks. So outside of the Eagles, any team they can compete with. But, God, it's not looking good at the midway point. If they fall to Buffalo to go to 3-5, they're going to have to play some really good football to make up for it down the stretch.
That's what I'm thinking about. Thinking about them going to 3-5, and maybe that's just more desperation, not because everyone's counting them out and because they're coming into Buffalo Sunday Night Football, but like they literally need it. Like they need it. You could argue that an NFC game, the Bills don't need it. They don't need it. But just Sean McDermott's going to have a game plan. He gets an extra week of film, 5-0, Mike. Off of buys. There's just nothing here. DVOA, regular numbered statistics. But Mike, you don't play this game on paper. As many people say all the time, the Bills are the stronger team on paper. The Bills are the strongest team as DVOA. The Bills are the strongest team PFF, whatever you want to use. The Bills are the stronger team, but you don't play this game on paper. It just takes, you're not going to get the elements, luckily, like you did in Miami, but it does take something like that. It takes a couple of bad fumbles, like fringe players putting the ball on the ground, like a Taiwan Jones, like a McKenzie dropping passes. But the Bills have been able to overcome that.
Even if the Bills do that, like, is Green Bay close enough where one mistake or two mistakes will cost the Bills?
3 or 4 or 5.
Think about it. The Bills against Kansas City played far from a flawless game. In the past, the Bills' errors that they had against the Chiefs a couple of Sundays ago would have cost them a game. They would have lost by double digits in that type of situation. Isaiah McKenzie bobbling the Allen pitch, the lack of execution in the red zone early, and it still didn't make a difference. The Bills found a way to get a victory. You look at the Taiwan Jones bobble, you follow it up with a 98-yard touchdown. You beat Pittsburgh by 35, and what we're seeing, and we were talking about this all off season, is the Bills' record of one-score games last year. Just it became such a talking point narrative. Oh, they can't win one-score games. Well, we were talking all off season. That stuff normally evens itself out, and so far this year it has. The Bills beat the Chiefs. The Bills beat the Ravens. They lost to Miami, but they probably should have won that game too. So now you're not only getting the dominant victories where they're just destroying teams like Tennessee 41-7 and Pittsburgh 38-3, but they're also right now winning a decent amount of their close contests. And it's crazy to think, looking back at last year, they went 11-6, because right now this is shaping up as a team that could go 15-2. You look at the schedule. Who do they lose to? If they lose a game, it's one of those where that's the random loss that they had to lose. I can't pick them to lose any of these games. Cincinnati is probably the best chance at a loss, but I can't pick against this Bills team. They are so good at almost everything they do. Like the one area they struggle at is run blocking and pass protection. Their offensive line is probably the most noticeable weakness on this team. If you look at advanced metrics and PFF grading, and you got Josh Allen behind center, that just makes up for it because he can make a pass at any given moment, regardless of how many yards are needed. And if that's covered up, he can just scramble for 15 yards. And despite the Bills' awful run blocking grade, they still have a good running grade overall on many of the different sites. So even in the one area where they struggle, it still hasn't impacted them overall. So yeah, right now you're not going to get me to pick anything but Bills down the stretch.
And you got Aaron Rodgers as the 11th ranked DVOA quarterback, 11th on PFF, also 27th in QBR. Like, he's not playing particularly great football. He's not doing enough to help his team win. He's playing in a situation where there's a lot of poor quarterbacks. He's playing top 12 football, but that's not what you expect from him. You expect 1 to 3 from Aaron Rodgers on a year-to-year basis. So as you see the deviation and the regression to his statistics to be 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, you start to see Green Bay falter. You start to see really how much he was able to do. You start to see really, even with just Devonta Adams, what that meant to the team, just one receiver. And with 0 receivers, you see a regression. You see a regression in his statistics, and all of a sudden the team's a losing record. So that's quite frankly shows you how important he is. And all of his metrics point to it. It points to him playing about average, about above average. And, a team that is depleted of some offensive talent, you need Josh Allen-like performances. And right now, he's not doing it. He's doing, other quarterbacks in his range, Jared Goff, Derek Carr. So that's the range he's in right now. He's not in the range of Mahomes. He's not in the range of Allen. Even Herbert's playing better than him. Joey Burrow, even Hurts and Lawrence are playing better by a lot of advanced statistics. So, right now he's not in there right now, but it wouldn't take much for him to figure it out. But it's not going to come with offensive weapons. It's going to come with Amari Rodgers. It's going to come with Dobbs. It's going to come with Robert Tonyan. They just don't, quite frankly, have the even the Bills receiving core. If a quarterback had to come play in Buffalo without Josh, they're inheriting a pretty good offensive weapons and skill players. You go there into Green Bay, and all of a sudden, even Justin Herbert struggles, Jalen Hurts would struggle. It's just a poor built offense. And what it is built for, Mike, is Aaron Jones. He's a really good player. He's an all-around back. He can catch. He's had ridiculous catches. He's one of the best running backs in the league. It's a shame they haven't really been able to figure him out a little bit more. He is 5th in DVOA across many metrics, 3rd in yards, 4th in overall DVOA. So he's good in pretty much every single expected yards and pretty much every single success rate and every single statistic. But that's a lot to be said. Are you worried about this running game consisting of potentially should be once again on paper one of the best AJ Dillon, Aaron Jones situations in the league, and it's just not at the current minute?
If there was one thing that the Bills struggled in the past years with McDermott, it was a little bit of the run defense, but that hasn't really been a concern for the Bills this year. The way that they've readdressed their defensive line, I'm not very scared of any of the running backs really in the NFL right now going up against the Bills, because if you're running against the Bills, how are you going to keep up with the Bills offense scoring the ball? The best chance you have is just to hopefully keep the clock going, capitalize on your few possessions, and keep it a close game till the end. Aaron Jones is going to get some yardage against the Bills. I would assume he's going to make some plays here and there, but I have the utmost confidence in the Bills' defensive line to contain him from going off and doing what Jonathan Taylor and what Derrick Henry did against the Bills last year from a yardage standpoint. And even in the Derrick Henry game last year, it was really just a few big plays. This Bills, and I sound overly confident right now, and I was going into that Jaguars game last year, so watch the Packers come out, have a great game, and make me eat my words. But when I look at this defense, the Bills linebackers have been balling, and the defensive line has been fantastic. Daquan Jones has been, as I stated last week, one of the best D tackles in football this year. He gets double teamed almost as much as anyone in the league, and his win rate against it has been fantastic. When you have Oliver next to him, you got guys like Jordan Phillips, and then you got the edge rushers that the Bills have. It's just setting so many free lanes for the Bills linebackers to take care of business. Milano's been fantastic. Edmonds has been fantastic. Tell me where the weaknesses are. If this Packers team has been struggling against the Jets in Washington, how is that going to be any different from an offensive standpoint against the Bills? The only thing I could see changing is maybe Rodgers plays with a confidence and a lack of fear, where some of these passes where he's deciding to check down, maybe he's a little bit more aggressive and he's like, screw it, let's just put it all out there. But if Rodgers goes into this matchup the same way he has in recent weeks, where he's not being aggressive, he's not being able to get the ball downfield, he's being forced to check it down, and the running game can't get going, which it hasn't in recent weeks for the Packers, you're not gonna be able to keep up with the Bills, even if you do score 20 points. How are you gonna hold the Bills under 30? So, I don't like the matchup for Green Bay.
And get out there, get your One Pass subscription. We're going to hear from Jones here shortly here on the Cover One Film Room at 9:00. So make sure you tune into Eric Turner, Anthony Prohaska, Kendall Merksey, and the team on the Cover One Film Room at 9:00 to talk with Daquan Jones. So that's going to be a pretty interesting segue for the best one tech in the NFL. So make sure you tune in for that and you hear what he has to say. Does he back up what we're saying here on the Going Deep podcast? We'll have to see. We're going to tune in ourselves, but make sure you get out there for the best coverage in Buffalo Bills podcasts out there. One Pass gets you a free shirt. You get to learn from the best. You get in-depth analysis. You get the Slack group channel. You get access to our contributors and ask specific questions or topics that you'd like us to cover on air. So make sure you get out there and you try One Pass for one of a really great premium subscription to Cover One. And Mike, I had here to talk about the schedule because as we kind of teased a little bit earlier on the show, what are the most important games remaining? And I wanted to read you some numbers and you can tell me what you think. Someone asked earlier, will they be favored or double-digit favors and how many games? Well, we're going to find out. 11.5-point favors against the Packers, 84% win probability. Important score of only 32, though, Mike. So that's an interesting factor off of this game. Early line, 7.5 in New York, 75% win percentage, and a 70 importance. So it's double the importance next week against New York. As you continue on the stretch, 8-point favorites against the Vikings, 75% again win probability, 39% importance rating. So still pretty low there. 89% win probability against the Browns at home, a 15-point spread, only a 14 on the importance score, November 20th against the Browns. As you continue on to Thanksgiving, you have a 12-point favorites, 85% win probability, and only a 14 important score out of 100 against the Lions week 12. The Patriots -7 on the road for the Bills, 73% win probability, 65% importance rating. Going into the following week against the Jets at home now, 11.5-point favorites, 84% win probability, and a 50% importance rating. Into the following week at home against the Dolphins, in which they expect the Bills to be double-digit favorites, 10-point favorites, and an 80% win probability with a 56 important score, which is, about as high as you'll see remaining here for the Bills. And then you get into Christmas Eve against the Bears, 9-point favorites on the road, 79% win probability, 40% important score. Into the Bengals game, everybody's favorite Bengals game, 58% win probability, -2 for Buffalo, an 84 important score there for Buffalo. And lastly, home against the Patriots, 11-point favorites, 47 important score, and an 83% win probability. That's the schedule, Mike. That's the schedule. So by far, it's the Cincy game. And they're basically mitigating and just lowering the Green Bay game to just any other game. It's not even as important as some of the division games, obviously. It's not even that much per probability wise. They're not saying it's, very hard game for Buffalo. Importance wise, it's not a very, the next week against the Jets, the Bills only have a 75% probability win and an 84% chance this weekend. So you can see right off the bat, which was supposed to be one of the Bills' primetime games, could be beside the Browns game. The line, it's down there. It's down there based on a lot of statistics.
Well, this game,
what's your overall
this game
thoughts?
is for fun. This is a fun game. Great matchup. One of the all-time greats versus one of the guys that's the up-and-coming great in the league next to Pat Mahomes. So this game is perfect for national TV, get ratings, cool QB matchup, and so forth. But from a Bills perspective, if you do lose, it's a non-conference game. It's not going to impact your tiebreakers. It's not going to have a big impact. I think I agree with most of what those numbers would say. Cincinnati game is the only reason why that's the number one importance remaining is that could have implications for seeding down the line. But since he already has 3 losses, so in that regard, if Cincy has 4 or 5 losses entering that game, I think from a seeding perspective, the Bills will essentially be in a good position outside of maybe Kansas City running the table to maybe clinch a 1 seed that week or the week after. The 2 games I think are the most important that I'm looking at right now are the Jets in 2 weeks and then the Miami game back in Buffalo. The reason I have the Jets game is right now they're 5-2. They're only a half game behind you in the standings. That's just because they have one more loss in the loss column. I'm not scared of the Jets, but if you start looking deeper into their playoff probabilities, can they make the playoffs? The Jets have a 60% chance to make the playoffs based on the current metrics. That's way higher than I would have assumed at the halfway point of the season. They have a lot of injuries. I think that's still premature to have that high of a playoff odds, especially when they're not winning games with their offense. They're winning games with their defense. Will that be able to stay the course going throughout? But I'm pretty confident the Bills will take care of business when they play the Jets in a couple weeks. I know New York has played the Bills tough at times in recent years, but I think the Bills will take care of business at the Meadowlands. And then the Miami game has to be up there just because you look at the Dolphins' schedule the next 5 weeks, it is light. I just want to pull it up here on my computer quick. Sorry, I don't have this already out here.
Yeah, no worries.
But if you look at the Dolphins' schedule coming up, you have the Lions, Bears, Browns, Texans. Right now, you're talking about a 4-3 Miami team. 4 weeks from now, we could be talking about an 8-3 Miami team. The Bills could win the next 4 weeks and still only have a slight division lead over Miami. And so that game in Buffalo, will it be to win the division? I don't think so, because I don't see the Bills losing more than a couple games the rest of the year. But that game is going to be a big late season matchup, and that's why it's difficult to even say which one of these is the most important, because I don't know if any of them are truly going to be that important if the Bills end up running the table and finishing with a 14-3 or 15-2 record. If you're finishing with that great of record, they are going to be so far ahead of everyone else besides maybe Kansas City that these games aren't going to have the significance that they might have in the past. And last point, I just want to talk about the schedule. We said before the year when we were making our projections, most of us were picking 13-4, 14-3, right around there. I was 13-4. We were assuming they were going to go 5-2, maybe 4-3 the first 7 games. The rest of the season was the easy matchups, and I know the AFC East is shaping out to be a good division, but the Bills just rolled Tennessee. Tennessee's 4-2, 41-7. I know the Rams are struggling. They killed them. You beat Baltimore, which is probably going to be the AFC North champion. It only gets easier. Like most of these DVOA,
and they smoked Pittsburgh. They smoked Pittsburgh,
Yeah,
and why that's important is Pittsburgh fought against to the last play against Miami.
Miami. Won, yeah. You look at the
And they beat
DVOA,
Tampa. And they beat Tampa.
Yeah, let me just pull. I just want to check this out quick. So if you're looking at the Bills' remaining schedule, Cincinnati has a DVOA of 6, and the Jets are 11, Miami 12. So like you got a few good games left, but most of the opponents you're playing are 11 to 32 range. You got one more elite test waiting, and then the rest are games that the Bills absolutely should win. Will they win all of them? Probably not, but they'll absolutely, like you said, be favored in most of these contests, be double-digit favors.
And the Bills are a projected 8-point favorites against Minnesota, another team that right now is like next after the Eagles on their side. So that's after the Green Bay Minnesota games. Like you've already played the Rams, you've played Minnesota, you've played Green Bay. You'll have a really good grasp on like that was supposed to be like 3 of maybe the top 6 teams over there. Like, I mean, at some point the NFC is struggling, just as a whole is struggling. As you can see from the AFC East, like there's not a lot of good teams, and that's why a team like the Jets could end up sneaking in a wild card spot, because why not? I mean, we'll see how much Breece Hall, they went out and immediately traded for Robinson. And
how
that shows me
difference does that make? Like you go Breece Hall to James Robinson. I know people like Robinson. I still think that's a downgrade overall.
It's a downgrade because of the elite talent.
I still don't think the Jets can score points. So to me, that doesn't like the
dude. Zach Wilson has thrown, was it over 5 yards? Wasn't it like 3 times?
Yeah. Like, the Denver Broncos are horrible. Like, they're playing with their backup quarterback who couldn't do anything. And the Jets have been playing some backup quarterbacks throughout this win streak. They beat the Dolphins' third stringer So that's a game that could actually have implications between Miami and New York going forward. But that's one of the things. You look at the rest of the division, Miami, they are vastly better when Tua is in the game compared to Teddy or their third-string quarterback. So Miami, like, their record actually is a little bit flawed because their losses have come without Tua. But I can't trust the Dolphins over the course of a 17-game season. They barely beat some of these teams that are not that great. Having that close of a game against Pittsburgh was honestly more of a concerning game than anything positive I could take out of it. New England, people wanted to pump up Mac Jones before the year, and then he gets hurt. Bailey Zappi has a couple good series, couple good wins. They haven't played anybody. The Patriots have not played anybody. Their 2 wins were against the Lions and the Browns in back-to-back weeks, and then we get on this Zappi mania and start freaking out about him. And what do we see? A bad Chicago Bears team come into Foxborough and just destroy them. And we'll see about the Jets. I think the Jets long-term could present maybe the top challenge in the AFC East to the Bills based on the way they're constructing their roster. But none of these teams are even close to the Bills level. And God, this is how it must be to have been a Colts fan for 15 years, a Patriots fan during the Brady years. It's almost, you come across with a sense of arrogance where you're almost overly confident, but I don't know how to pump up other teams when I spend an entire weekend of football watching teams struggle to get first downs, and the Bills could have a 3rd and 20, and I'd say, you know what, Allen, just go for it. Don't
run a draw.
Have a chance.
Yeah, don't run a draw. Actually, go for the Bills are in a unique position to where they can convert any situation in any setting, in any field type against Pittsburgh, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, whatever it was, 3rd and 12 on the 2. And they just had
the 1 against Kansas City with a minute and 15
on
seconds
on the
left to go in the half.
How many teams try to get 4 yards and punt? How many teams?
This team, I think I've alluded to this in previous shows, and if I haven't, I'll just mention it once again right now. This team is constructed like some of the great teams in the history of football. When you have all these organizations want young offensive-minded head coaches, and I get it. That's how you win football now. Offense wins championships. I know it used to be defense, but it's about offense now. The way the NFL game is reffed and officiated, you need to have a great quarterback. But the ultimate recipe to winning big, and I'm talking like championships, not 1, but 2, 3, 4, however many you want, is having a defensive mastermind head coach paired with a dynamic quarterback that's so good that doesn't matter who's coaching him. You could give Josh Allen any coach in the NFL as his offensive coordinator. He's going to find a way to make it work, because even if things are messed up, he can do things with his legs. He can do things with his arms. He is surrounded by playmakers. You pair that with a defensive mastermind who has a strategy for almost any offense you go up against. Even a team like Kansas City, KC got their yardage, but you held them to 20 points and you made big plays in the 4th quarter to get the ball back to your offense 2 times in a row. That's a recipe, and you add on to it special teams. Yes, the Bills aren't the greatest special teams in the world, but Tyler Bass is a reliable kicker that you have a leg that can boom it from 60. Special teams from a kickoff coverage is dynamic almost all the time. How often do you see the Bills allow a return past the 25? Rarely. It almost never happens. So this team has all of the things that you look for and you want. And the only thing keeping me back from saying the stuff like they're going to win championships is the Buffalo sports mentality that tells us that, the Bills or Buffalo teams are going to find a way to screw up. If you just erase any superstitious crap or previous notions that Buffalo sports fans have had of curses for the past 50 years, you just look at this team, like, you should be able to confidently say, like, they're going to win a Super Bowl in the next few years. This year, next year, they might win multiple Super Bowls. Like, this is set up to be one of the great teams in football. And the DVOA say it, the stats say it, everything says it. They just have to do it in January and February. but everything says this is one of the great teams that we've seen in the past 5+ years in the NFL.
Injuries are the only thing that could derail the Bills. That's for sure a certainty, and they're getting healthier. Trey White's back. Really only missing Micah Hyde going forward. We'll see about Spencer Brown, but other than that, Sean McDermott has said they are fairly healthy. And even if Spencer Brown's out for a week, okay, like we're not going to really, miss much. There's many stats that point to Quesenberry playing just as good of a right tackle as Spencer Brown is at this current moment. So the Bills really are missing a safety and would love to have Micah Hyde. He made a huge play in the playoff game last year. He is a difference maker on the Bills defense, but the defensive backs are ridiculous. Mike, it's just crazy how talented the defensive back room is going to be. It has played super well to this point, and you're getting an all-pro back this week, or maybe not. You can say against the Jets.
There's a couple people.
You can't even play all these guys.
I gotta find the names. They're escaping me right now. But there's a couple people in the chat right now that I know called me out in the beginning of the season when I said the secondary was the biggest concern entering the season due to
their biggest strength.
Trey White being out, and I had my questions about Dane Jackson and the two rookies, and that only got larger when Micah Hyde was out, Jordan Poyer missing time. But my God, they've been fantastic. The Bills secondary has been tremendous, and the depth is insane right now. You talk about when Trey White is back in there, you got Trey on one side, Dane Jackson, Taron Johnson's one of the best slot corners in football, and now you have Kyer Elam as your 3 once. Trey White is back, maybe splitting time with him if they want to be on a little bit of a rotation. But Kyer Elam is stepping up. I know people were talking about some of the receptions he allowed against Pittsburgh, but 2 interceptions back-to-back weeks, like that's impressive. Christian Benford's good. And it's funny, we forget that Xavier Woods is Rhodes, is on the Bills practice squad. So the depth is just stunning, front to back. And even at safety, Damar Hamlin is really stepped up and played quality football since Micah Hyde went down. And we have reasons to be confident in Leslie Frazier, Sean McDermott. Time and time again, when players have to step up, they do. And that's a credit to the coaching staff.
4th and pass DVOA, that's going against some good pass offenses, including Patrick Mahomes. The way that they were able to play in the red zone and confuse him at the end of the game, it's fascinating. They weren't able to do it last year, period. Between Von Miller and the DBs, Levi Wallace, bye-bye, not able to clinch another game yesterday or a couple days ago. And
dropped a couple
because he sucks. He sucks at football. He's not very good.
A little harsh.
He's only in the game because Pittsburgh has 2 corner injuries. He's just was one of the weakest links, guys. And you see it right now that even a guy like Christian Benford from an FCS school, able to come out and be productive and be a key member, great tackler, be a key member of this roster and able to diagnose and designate plays like he was able to do all day against Kansas City. Kyer Elam showed moments and flashes, being a strict man coverage, a simple 1-read cornerback in college, was able to be successful against Kansas City. You see Dane Jackson pointing out the call and pointing out what Patrick Mahomes is going to do to Taron Johnson. Just fascinating defensive back skills, zone and man beaters. They're just, quite frankly, they were able to see that Patrick Mahomes was looking for a zone beater and didn't realize that half the defense was in man. So,
and you see what they did against San Fran a week later, like a San Fran defense considered to be on the same level as the Bills, and they go for 44. So that just tells you where the Bills defense is.
It's great. And you're getting an all-pro cornerback, one of the best heartbeats of the team. Like, if you're looking at it from a perspective of how do you not trade from that position group? How do you not look at the cornerbacks and make a move there now that Trey White's back? Like, to me, it's a matter of strength to go get us. Like, it's just you can't play all those players. And yes, depth's good, but that room is in good shape. It's good across the board. The defensive line is shut it down against Kansas City. The defense and the linebackers are finally, Matt Milano always has played top notch. Tremaine Edmonds has shown flashes, but top notch across the defense. There's really not a hole there unless you want to call Hamlin it, but there's really not a hole on that defensive side of the ball. And to me, if it was anyone, it was Jaquan Johnson, who didn't play very well in his limited action, in my opinion, and he's not on the field. So the Bills are in good shape defensively. Then compared to Miami, who's 20th pass DVOA, is going to kill them. They're 20th against the pass defensively, and it's going to kill them when teams aren't running 80 plays in 130-degree weather. It's going to kill them. You can be condescending all you want about you can't sue the sun. That's fine. But guess what? It's not in November, December, and January, 130 degrees. And that's where that 20th DVOA against the pass is going to show itself. And it's going to show itself across many platforms. And the fact that they need to play better if they think they're going to compete for a division title, let alone beyond. So for me, Mike, that's a lot of good to talk about here. I'm not even sure what you do with the roster here with all the corners. You're going to be scratching some players. You're going to be active, healthy inactives here this week. Probably Cam Lewis will be a healthy inactive. That's fine. You know, you're probably going to have to sit Kaiir Elam, which is a shame. You're not going to bench Dane Jackson right now. You're not going to bench Taron Johnson, obviously. I mean, Dane Jackson's your everyday starter. I don't know what you do with Benford. It's a shame. It's a shame that they have so much talent at the defensive back position to where, I don't know. I could see trading from that position group. It's not going to happen, but
I don't think there's any reason to trade any of them.
But
Calgary Mafia, it's a great problem to have, Kevin. I mean, you're talking about rookies.
Yep.
This is, if anything, continue. They're getting great experience right out the gate. And ideally, when everybody's healthy, you have Trey as your one. You have Dane Jackson. Now that's a great 1-2 combo. And you add Kaiir Elam as a third guy on the field if necessary to join Taron Johnson. Like, you're talking about an insane depth, an insane amount of depth. And, you know, I don't think the plan was ever to have Christian Benford be an impact player on this defense to open the year. We entered training camp wondering if he was going to make the roster. It's a great place to be in, where now going forward, you have the flexibility, a little bit of flexibility with your secondary to have some cost-controlled players and figure out what the best way to move forward is. I know people have been talking on social media about, well, we should transition one of them to safety. I don't think that happens during the middle of the year. I don't think this is the time to mix up with things like that. But during the offseason, if you continue to want to go with Trey, Dane, and Kaiir, maybe there's a situation where you could see if Christian Benford can play safety. I still don't even know if I would want to do that. I'm pretty content with everyone where they're at right now. And if there is a move to be made with this team, we can always talk about OBJ in a month from now. As far as trade deadline targets, I really think they're fine the way they are. I don't really see a need to go out and
it'd be running back.
Running back would be the one position that possibly they can make a move with the price being pretty low. When we were talking about wide receiver, Brandon Cooks is going to be too expensive. He has a big money left on his deal still. Chase Claypool is going to be too much, too many assets to acquire in a trade. Same with Moore in Carolina. So I don't see those happening. But running back would be the one situation where maybe you could see a move. Still don't think it's likely. We've been talking in our Cover One chats about Kareem Hunt. Could that be a guy that the Bills potentially look to make a move for, with Cleveland struggling off to a 2-5 start? I don't know. Are any of you guys in the comment section cool with Kareem Hunt? I would like the fit from a Buffalo offensive standpoint for rental if it's a cheap pick, like a 6th-round pick, something like that. But other than that, I think I'm even fine with the Bills' backfield if James Cook starts to show more overall.
Gibson's the name for me. I think you can have them. They're interested in Brian Robinson right now, and rightfully so. Brian Robinson's been a pretty good player for them. But Gibson would be an interesting player. I love Josh Jacobs. He's taken some heat for not running at a high yards per clip. Guy's a difference maker. He can do everything on the field. Didn't pick up their 5th-year out. People are like, well, why would they trade him? Because they didn't want him as of 3 months ago. So they didn't pick up their 5th-year option on him. They're not going to – they can still go and pay him if they want to, the same amount of rate that they would. The Bills aren't going to pay him, $8 to $14 million a year or whatever he ends up getting. it's a rental. And I believe that he truly could be a difference maker for the Bills as you cross the finish line here. Definitely have a rookie Greg Rousseau silver cracked from Absolute, from Panini Absolute Edition. Would love to give away a rookie Greg Rousseau for the victory on the bye week. I don't know. Someone jump out to me if anyone's looking for Greg Rousseau in their collection. Let me know. And would love to pass it on over. Appreciate everybody listening to the Going Deep podcast, and to Daquan Jones coming on the film room here in 50 minutes. So we really appreciate everybody tuning in to the Going Deep podcast. And guess what? Next week is, Mike. It is World Beyond live on the trade deadline day. So live on the day, 4 p.m. We'll be here at 7 o'clock. We'll be here at 7 o'clock here with.
Well, we have to have our guy on next week, right?
We do. I got him. I got my guy Ty.
Tyson.
Yep. Got him locked in. Tyson Rauch from Let's Talk Jets will be here on the show. Great guest.
This guy's awesome. If you guys haven't seen him, great guy.
Good mix of commentary to actual good eye of the game. Does bring in a really good group of chatters, so look out for them next week. And now he's got something to talk about.
It's going to be weird, though, Kev. It's going to be weird, especially if they beat New England to move to 6-2. Yeah. Hearing a positive Tyson, is he going to let the Jets winning get to his head? Is he going to get overly confident? Like, are we going to see a different version of him? I don't know if I can relate to a happy Tyson. So,
yeah, there's an air about him. We'll see what he's able to do. If everyone wouldn't mind smashing the like button for us, it helps us bring great content, helps us continue to do what we want to do and have a great guest. Guests love when you guys are active, man. That's all I can say is they want to see the chat roaring. They want to know that there's somewhere special, that they're talking Bills football with some of the best Bills fans out there. So it means a lot to the guests when they come in. They see likes, they see comments, they see chats, they see everything. That means a ton.
And it helps us. It helps us too,
yeah.
Kevin.
Yeah.
The more likes, the more. And then, like, if comments outside of the chat too help us tremendously. So appreciate any likes, any comments on the main thread. It helps the algorithm, which then helps us get out to more people, increase the views. Great for all of Cover One, all the different podcasts throughout the network. So any comments outside of the live chat and any likes, we appreciate it.
And AJ, I will gladly make this your first NFL card. DM me your information. I'll gladly send this out to you. Appreciate everybody tuning in, which is a special card. I hope this actually, Greg, I know Greg Rousseau is more than willing to sign this for you as well. So definitely worthy rookie card that I hope ends up turning into at least a valuable piece to a collection. And I see you, Calgary Mafia, as well. Hit me up. I appreciate you tuning into this as well. We'll see if there's something we can send out you guys for tuning into the show. And yes, there is Sabres After Dark here. I know Mike's ready for Sabres After Dark. I can see that going on.
The 4-1 Buffalo Sabres, 3-0 on their current road trip. They haven't lost to a Canadian team all year. Darlene, 5 goals in 5 games. Alex Tuck, 6 goals in 5 games. This team, they're surprising people. Too early to talk about playoffs, but let's hope that they give us a fun ride until the end of the season. And who knows, maybe.
Really great. That team's been special. And my wife's a big Bills Sabres fan. Comes from a Sabres family. Believe it or not. So it's been very fun to see the journey that they're on to finally, hopefully, have something to talk about both ways here for the Bills and the Sabres going forward. But Tyson Rauch will be here on the Going Deep podcast next week. That's going to be a super fun show on trade deadline day. So we're gonna have to see what we're gonna do at times. If something happens, maybe we'll come a little bit early at you. If not, everything's gonna go as planned at the same time. Right here at 7 o'clock. Mike, 6:30 next week, maybe pushing it up.
It might be 6:30. We'll have to decide. In addition to being a Sabres fan, obviously me and Kev are big UB people, but I went to Ohio University, so there's a MAC football battle, 3-1 Bobcats versus the 4-0 UB Bulls. Ralph Wilson Sr. I'm normally go UB, but there's one time I can't root for the Bulls, and that's when they play a vastly superior university that's in Athens, Ohio, called Ohio University. And I love the UB Bulls. Believe me, I've been a season ticket holder for their football, basketball, but I gotta say, go Bobcats. So show might be moved a little bit because they're playing on ESPN2 next week. But
yeah, ESPN2.
I don't know, Kevin. I mean, if you want it the normal time, I'm okay with that because I don't want you to be watching Curtis Rourke throw touchdown after touchdown after touchdown. I don't want you to have nightmares of that. So if you want to do normal time, just to avoid the beatdown that's going to happen, I understand.
And Mike, you gotta save the UB Mac content for a potential UB show. So you gotta save that. You gotta save those nuggets and news for what could be going forward for a really great college football game. UB's winning, so UB's winning. The Bills are winning. The Sabres are winning. There's a lot to look forward to. Green Bay is in town for a much talked about. We broke it down.
Halloween the day after.
The day after.
This is a weekend to celebrate. And Notre Dame is playing at Syracuse on Saturday. This is going to be a fun weekend throughout Western New York, Central New York. It's pumpkin season. It's frightening season with Halloween. So we're going to have a lot to talk about next week. We're going to have one of our favorite guests, and we'll just keep it going and hopefully have a Bills victory to talk about next Tuesday.
And don't forget, on top of it all, trade deadline day here on the Going Deep podcast. We're going to read the trade deadline talk if necessary, even just maybe talk about with Ty maybe the moves across the league. If the Bills don't make any, I do have a feeling there will be some. There's definitely been some. They've been hotter lately. A lot of more trades. Look at the draft. You know, you saw many receivers go out the door. We'll see what this trade deadline day goes. As Christian McCaffrey's already been traded, you wouldn't see a major trade like that in many years past for a premier running back talent like that that's signed for multiple years. So we'll see what the Bills are able to do. I'm definitely keeping my eyes open. I don't anticipate the Bills doing anything at least big, but I wouldn't be shocked if at 3 p.m. next Tuesday something breaks where the Bills trade for a guy that you wouldn't earn expecting, whether it's a starting safety, whether it's another receiver, whether it is the running back that we've all talked about in Gibson or Melvin Gordon or something lower level like that. Or if it's a bigger name, like one name that, you know, has stuck out to me because of his contract, reduced his base salary to $1 million, and would not shock me to see moved across the league is Mike Evans. So just watch out for that. I'm not saying to the Bills, but I am saying that it is conceivable based on his contract number, 1 year left on his deal next year, no guaranteed money if traded, low base salary, plays in the slot, 99 snaps in the slot this year. Never know. So just something to keep in mind as we approach trade deadline. Then we saw his drop with Brady this last week. So we'll see what that amounts to out of Tampa. But is the solution, as Mike already referred to, is it OBJ? Von Miller seems to think so. So is Odell Beckham going to choose Buffalo? But I heard Kansas City's now a strong contender for the OBJ sweepstakes. But I think this week says a lot. If they stand pat, I do think that increases the likelihood of OBJ, truthfully. If they don't,
and before
I think that lowers the likelihood.
Yeah, and before we wrap up, there was a report on Twitter over the weekend that OBJ is not expected to actually appear in any games until mid-December, which in the past might have been a deterrent with the season normally ending the first week of January, last week of December. But now when you have 2 January games, that will give enough of a ramp-up time to get him in some regular season action. If you have a bye week on top of that, assuming you get the top seed in the AFC, that'll give you a solid month to really get him acclimated to the Bills before an important playoff game. So I do think the move still is reasonable and does make sense. If anything, just to keep him from going to Kansas City. We don't know how his ACL is going to be. We don't know if he's going to be what he's going to look like once he does return to a football field. But I don't want to take that chance that Kansas City could acquire what could be a dangerous weapon. I'd rather him stay out of KC, come to Buffalo. If it doesn't work out, you don't give up much.
I think that has to play into it, though.
You got some insurance.
I think that has to play into it where the player ends up. It's just as important that he doesn't push over the Chiefs or maybe another competitor, that it does matter to me. If I don't see why he would go and sign with someone 500 right now. It doesn't, especially like you're saying mid-December, if that's true. Why you're not going to sign with a 500 team. You're going to sign with a playoff team. Thus, the Bills should be more interested, not less. If he was going to go to, I don't even know, somewhere that's battling the Raiders, something like that, whatever. But if he's like, even the Rams are iffy right now, but even if he was to come to a playoff team, I think the Bills need to think about it. But I've always been a proponent of, I would have liked the player now. You can IR him. He's out for 4 games. He's in your system. He's on the sideline. He's learning with Josh. I think that has some value. You're not wasting a roster spot. He makes more money because he has 4 more weeks of pay. And maybe that does end up happening if his timetable is sometime in early December. Maybe you do see him signed around the deadline, maybe in the next couple of weeks for 4 games prior to him playing. Would make sense to me. Whenever he's at the 4-week mark, it makes sense to sign OBJ, put him on IR, bring him off of injured reserve, going into whatever week he's ready to play. Gets him in the system, gets him in your rehab facility, your training facility, gets him checked out by your doctors, gets him in the system, gets him to play. There's too many positives right now than to not. So that is definitely something I've always said. Once he's 4 weeks out, he should be in an offense somewhere. So maybe he's not 4 weeks out yet. Maybe that's proof that he's not 4 weeks out yet. So that's an interesting thing to monitor. And we'll talk about that more here on the Going Deep podcast. I guarantee you it comes up like every other week. So I guarantee you we'll talk about OBJ right here on the trade deadline special. If need be, next week, we'll probably get into at least around the league again, Mike, talk about what happens, if anything. And then more if it pertains to the Bills. And then a little bit about OBJ, what that means, if he's more likely without any moves. And then we have Tyson Rauch here to talk Jets football next week. It'll be a fun one, guys. I really appreciate everybody. Very interested to get out there and have Ty on this show. He's one of my absolute favorite guys. So please make sure you come out here and you watch and you come and interact, because he's going to bring some of his visitors to be here on the show. So with all that being said, we got the film room coming up here in 40 minutes. So everybody stay here, stay tuned. We got the Sabres playing here at 10 o'clock in Seattle. So much to go. So much going on here on the Cover One Podcast Network. Great shows, great written content. Please make sure you check out all the other shows. 5 stars on Apple Podcast. Please, that means the world to us if you're able to go out there. And if you're listening on demand, if you're listening on Spotify, thank you so much. Would love for you guys to interact with us on our live shows one of these days. So with all that being said, it was an action-packed 80 minutes of football, a DVOA talk, gave away a Greg Rousseau card. Please make sure you reach out to me. And more next week's jam-packed edition to review a game, trade deadline. Mike, there's so much going on next November 1st to happen here. And then so much going on against the Cover One Podcast Network. Please check out the film room right now in 40 minutes here with Daquan Jones and the film room crew. From Kevin Masseri, Mike Bunt, we really appreciate everybody tuning in. Mike, we need predictions, though, before we take off to wrap up this show. Mike, you were wrong last week.
We were going to wrap up without the predictions. I already made one the other day. I will say 30-20 Bills win this one.
Okay.
It's always hard for me to have, when you have an 11 spread, to say that the Bills will take care of that. I know the Bills do have a good track record recently, but I'll say it stays within that number, and comfortable 10-point win.
34-14 is a number that's jumped out to me from the start on this one. I think 34-14 Buffalo. Numbers aren't there for Green Bay. Would need more than a couple plays to go wrong for that to tighten up. Like Mike already said, one fumble may not be enough.
It'll be 30-13 late, and then Rodgers will get a garbage time touchdown. I feel comfortable.
Sure.
I feel good.
They cover then. You got them covering. Fine with me. 34-14 has always jumped out to me. I think that it's going to be one of those games where it's 7-7, and then the Bills are going to do their thing like they do always, and they continue to just, even against Patrick Mahomes, not allow more than 7-10 points in the second half. 17 total this season. I just don't see a team like Green Bay getting 17 in one game in the second half to do what they need to do to win. So unless there's some crazy instance, I just don't see it in Orchard Park, especially with the raucous crowd, Sunday Night Football. Allen needs to prove to finish off his tour that he can beat the best of the best quarterbacks. He's not going to get a chance at Brady, but he's going to be able to prove that he's going to be able to take down Lamar. He's going to take down Patrick Mahomes. I think that means something. I think that means something to him and the team. So I do not see this being the game that they sleep on. You have a better chance at that. We'll talk about that next week with Tyson Rauch. Could this be a game the Bills sleep on next week against the Jets? That will be a topic for next week in New York. But from the Going Deep podcast, we got the film room coming up here now in about 35 minutes. From Kevin Masseri, Mike Bunt, the Cover One Podcast Network, we really appreciate everybody tuning in here for this live show. On-demand listeners, appreciate you as well. Please leave us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, smash the like, comment below, and look out for Tyson Rauch and our trade deadline special next week. We'll catch you guys later.
Josh Allen, looking deep, going deep.
To me, talking about the Bills, what else would you rather be doing?
We're hoping to add a new dimension to the Cover One network.
Slings it deep downfield, and it's caught inside the 20.
Right now, I just want to talk about this championship level. I've never had a championship caliber team to talk about.
I want to focus more on the storylines each week. What are the big stories going on with the Bills? What are thoughts, commentary? How do these things impact Buffalo?
Deep drop. Deep throw. And it is hauled in for the touchdown.
Allen deep to the end zone and caught for a touchdown.
Play action.